Welcome to Now Serving a Site of Therapy, a client's introductory guide into the therapeutic world. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. To schedule a therapy appointment, call us at 650-223-5065. For more information on this and other related topics, check out our blog at isotherapy.com, where you can also contact us through our website. I'm your host, Dalton Huckabee, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm grateful you've joined me. So yeah, I'm glad that you kind of mentioned too that there's, different levels, like people come in like at different levels, like they may be still in a relationship or some may be out of the relationship. And so I was curious, like you mentioned earlier too, like around employment, like what services or resources do you offer clients? Like, do you offer them like, hey, let's sit down and do a budget if you need help with finances, or if you sit down like looking for a job, like what exactly, like how does CORA support clients with those needs?
Yeah, maybe it will help to walk through how clients even get connected to services, and because it's like pretty
Yes.
multifaceted.
Okay.
So most clients get connected to CORA through our 24/7 hotline. Many domestic violence organizations will have something like a 24/7 hotline that they can call and talk to an employed advocate here. And they can either just talk about what they're experiencing. They don't even have to want anything from CORA for their services. They can get resources that maybe we don't specialize in, and so we can refer them to plenty of resources that might fit what they're needing better if it's not domestic violence related. Or they can get connected to the further services we have at CORA, which are things like, of course, a mental health department. We also have a legal department. We have a safe house and a housing department. Those are our main kind of direct services. We also have many other things like prevention and education and volunteers and all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the client side, they can meet with a client advocate to talk about maybe a court case they're going through and ask questions about the case, or potentially get representation for things like restraining orders, get information on how to apply for restraining orders, those kinds of things, learn about their rights. That's huge. At mental health, we provide things like individual therapy, group therapy, child therapy, family therapy. We have a lot of flexibility where we can, if a client has a need, and we can try to fit that need best we can. In terms of this, we have a confidential safe house that if clients don't have anywhere else to go and they need to leave a place immediately, we can get them connected to the safe house. We also have a supportive housing department that can help with things like rent. Like if an abusive partner was a part of the lease, they shared a place together, the abusive partner left, and now the survivor has to pay rent all by themselves, isn't able to afford that. The supportive housing department can support with things like that, or support getting them resources for apartments that are in the area that are able to support them, or different. They have a whole plethora of services there. Also, newly, as a part of our kind of housing team department, we have had a new position that specifies in jobs, because we see that as such a huge lack, such a gap in resources in general across the county, across different agencies. It can be really challenging to try to find a job and things like that. So we have someone who is able to support those that are in the housing department with finding more stable income and applying for jobs and finding jobs that kind of fit the niche of what they're able to provide. So those are like the actual material, like we can refer you in-house to things. And in terms of like the therapy, yeah, whatever the clients, we are more of like a shorter term therapy basis. So we're not able to see clients for long term. So
I see.
yeah, we're kind of like the stepping stone between crisis and longer term care. But within that shorter term, there is a lot we can still do. Like we will make specific goals about what it is that they want to accomplish in the time that we have together, which could be between 3 to 6 months, sometimes even as long as a year. If it depends on the case, really. But if their number one goal is I want to get a job, and these are maybe my mental emotional barriers to being able to overcome that, then we can look at, well, what are the things that are stopping you from applying for a job? Maybe that's a feeling of worthlessness, like they're not able to do it, or they don't feel empowered to do it. Let's work on how to make you feel more empowered, and maybe that includes some more prescribed steps. Like this week, we're going to make a plan for how many jobs you're going to apply to, what it is you're going to look for, things like that. We do also have case managers in-house too that can help with providing so many different kinds of referrals to other organizations within San Mateo that can help with whatever specific needs clients are having to things like job train, or which is like a local, I don't know if they have job train in LA,
It
but it's,
is.
yeah, they're all over. They're
I'm
just
sure.
places that can provide education resources on applying for jobs, and resources for that and opportunities. So we try to meet the clients where they're at. There's not a whole lot that if it's related to their work in domestic violence and recovering from domestic violence, we'll do the best we can to support them with what it is their goals are, and help them get to the next step of their journey in healing.
Yeah, that's great. It really reminds me of like when we think about like providing mental health services, right? Like, like because we are, as complex beings, right? Like there's really kind of working with the client as a whole is what
Yeah.
I was hearing, right? And kind of like addressing like all these different needs, and
Mhm.
um and it sounds like part of that, like you said, you also have like, family therapy, and and all these programs. And sounds like one of your programs is the LGBTQ plus program that
Yeah.
you actually kind of you have a primary role in supporting survivors in that program. Would you
Mhm.
like to kind of chat about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd love to share. Yeah, so I'm the LGBTQ plus clinical coordinator, which is a fancy title of saying I help coordinate that program so it keeps running. And I also work with clients directly as a clinician, whether they're LGBTQ plus clients or not. Um, and that program is specifically um, designed to make sure that all of CORA services are accessible to everyone who needs them, as well as being connected to the greater San Mateo County LGBTQ plus community, other organizations that serve the community, or doing outreach, anything to get the word out about how CORA is a safe place that LGBTQ plus survivors can go to. And one thing I want to say why we have this program, why we believe it's really important, is that when we think about the history of domestic violence organizations, and even the way that domestic violence is portrayed in media, there's a really specific image of it. And it was created at a really specific time. Most of these organizations came around in the 70s, and it was, cisgender heterosexual women escaping physical violence from their, cisgender heterosexual husbands usually. And that was like a pretty narrow view of what domestic violence was. It was a great place to start there. That's how shelter started. And then these organizations started expanding from there. And as we grow and learn more about domestic violence and how it's not just physical, we also learn more about how it doesn't affect just one kind of person. Anyone can be a survivor or a perpetrator of intimate partner violence. And many LGBTQ plus people have been either left out of the narrative or not made space for, or haven't had the opportunity to be educated about intimate partner violence, and so are really left out of getting services, and might feel really intimidated to reach out to an organization that doesn't specialize in supporting LGBTQ plus people. And so the hope of the program is that folks can see we are dedicated to you and the LGBTQ community, and making sure that we can support them in the complex ways that domestic violence can show up in LGBTQ plus relationships, because yeah, it doesn't discriminate. It can show up anywhere.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, because um I know someone who was in a homosexual relationship, right? And they when they tried to get some support from the local police, they were finding this judgment, right? They
Hmm.
were getting this judgment from the police, like, oh, it's just another couple of gay guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like they weren't getting the support that they needed because they
Hmm.
of that blind filter that, oh, domestic violence can occur, right?
Right.
In homosexual relationships. So the fact that that's there, I think is amazing.
Yeah, that still happens, the bias, and also maybe being not believed or labeled as like mutually abusive, or there's so many things that make it more complex, that including like systemic barriers, just like that, where if you don't have a police report, guess what? It makes it really hard to get a restraining order, and then it makes it really hard to win any kind of court case. And unfortunately, that kind of documentation can be really vital sometimes to um, the safety of survivors sometimes. Um, so yeah, that's a big thing to think about. And also, we want to work with folks that don't want to involve the police. That's totally fine too. We don't like coordinate with police departments like that. They make referrals to us, but our role is separate. We don't send anything to court systems, and we give information to clients, and clients can provide that on their own behalf. Um, but we work with clients with whatever it is that how they want to go about their cases. So if they don't want to make any kind of reports, we're not going to force anyone to make reports, and we'll see how we can get them some safety and some support without having to go around certain avenues, because there's a lot of real reason why many people might not want to go to the police or want to go through the
Absolutely.
court
Yeah.
system.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, it sounds like, you're doing some really important work there, right? And,
Thanks.
because, like you said, there can be from this, social bias, right? And just a lot of pressures that people might be feeling, like if they are experiencing this and not knowing how or where or who, right, of getting that support that they need.
Yeah.
Um,
I've been thinking about vicarious resilience a lot, which is just as potent as vicarious trauma. You know, the clients can give us resilience in the same way.
Vicarious resilience.
Yeah, vicarious resilience. Yeah, I learned about this concept from let's see how to describe her. I guess a colleague um, who used to work at CORA, was a supervisor at CORA for a really long time, and yeah, she had done many groups, seen many clients, and yeah, vicarious resilience, this idea that just like vicarious trauma, where we hear about traumatic things all the time, it can make us feel some of those symptoms of trauma might kind of pass on to other people and to providers, trying to
Oh,
get through
uh-huh.
things. But
Uh-huh.
resilience is the same way. We can see the way that our clients are resilient to overcoming their obstacles, that it can give us that same amount of resilience in that same kind of way. That makes sense at all.
Is it kind of like a little like contagious
Yeah,
almost? Is
it's
that what you mean?
contagious. A
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It is
Oh, that's
contagious.
great. I never thought about that way
Yeah,
before. Yeah, which
yeah.
just makes me even think further, right? Like if we surround ourselves with these supportive people, right,
Mhm.
we can help it kind of like be in that space of like feeling motivated for change, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Or like if you think about what you focus on, if you focus on the things that are really difficult about a situation versus like where the strengths of the situation, it's kind of a similar thing too,
Yeah, what do I
perspective.
have control over, right? In this
Exactly.
situation where I feel so powerless.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know we touched earlier on around this aspect of empowering and kind of the string space approach. I was kind of curious, are there some other, like, is there another like aspect or two that stands out in mind for you that can guide healing when you're working with clients?
Yeah, I love this question that you had asked about what guides healing. It made me think about it in kind of a different way. Um, and when I was thinking about it, um, there's a few things. I think first of all, at least my own philosophy, and I think much of the philosophy we hold in the mental health department at CORA is we always want to be client centered first. So clients are their voice and what are the next steps to their healing process is the most important to consider. Clients are, gosh, so resilient, so smart, so have so many strengths, and listening to those strengths and giving them space to have choice again by empowering their strengths is a huge part of it. We don't want to perpetuate abuse by telling people what it is they should and shouldn't do, because again, that's
Right,
just more power and
exactly.
control. We're an
Yes.
organization with power, and so what are we going to do? Try to control people more? That's perpetuating the system of abuse. Um,
Right. Right. Very good point.
yeah, so I think that's part of it, is individuals themselves are their number one resource for what they know to be their next step. And that can be really hard to access. And so what can help them access that is um, professional help can really help support them to access their internal um, choices in that way. And so that's kind of where I see therapy coming in, is if folks feel like they're not getting the support or care they need through themselves or through their community relationships, then great, therapy can be an awesome option. um, and something I've thought about a lot, especially this past year, is I think sometimes people come into therapy and think that um, it's going to make the problems go away. And I think the hard part about life is that that's not really how it works,
It's
that
not,
life is
sadly enough.
life is going to be difficult whether or not we want it to be or not. And so healing isn't about waking up every day happy, waking up every day, you know, ready. Every day is not going to be the same in that way. It's like, how do we become resilient when things become really difficult? How can we be flexible to adapt to new realities, our new lives, when things change? And so, in my view, I kind of look at what are the strategies, what are the tools to make us and to make me a more like flexible, resilient, adaptive human being. And anything that can kind of point to that is gonna, I think, kind of set you up for a lifetime of healing and of being able to go with the difficulties that life gives you, because life is always going to throw something at you.
Right. Yeah. And that's a good point. And part of what I was hearing too is like the client gets to define their own goals, right? Much like they're the expert
Hmm.
of their own lives, right? They also get to identify what their own goals are. So, providing them with the mental health services or the resources to work towards those goals. Again, healing can be different for everyone, right?
Hmm.
And so, and yeah, we can also kind of take a step back and maybe see how they're, maybe like you said, autonomy's been stripped away, right? Or there's these other things that can be pretty common. And so we're working towards that resiliency just keeps coming up. I tell you
Yeah,
over and over again. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that one speaks loud and clear. Um, and and so in the face of um offering the services, right, and the resources, and the support systems, right, earlier on you mentioned that as part of your programs that you have like family therapy sessions and whatnot. And what I was curious about is, how does psychoeducation fit within your model of supporting clients?
yeah. Psychoeducation is such a huge part. Many of us don't come into this world with a roadmap about what healthy relationships look like. And so learning, even like, you
Or
know,
life, period.
well, life period, yeah. I mean, I'd love to meet the
There's no
person
life
that
101.
gets one of those. I'd love to see it. But yeah, with healthy relationships, like most people, I think, aren't modeled for like the most healthy relationships all the time, because the world we live in is like abusive in a lot of ways, and that filters into relationships. Um, and so education is a huge part of it, psychoeducation. And we do that on a variety of fronts. As an organization as a whole, we provide a lot of preventative education to the community, like at community colleges or high schools, or even with the LGBTQ plus program. My coworker and I will go out to colleges or to organizations and provide presentations on how abuse and healthy relationships look within LGBTQ plus relationships. So
Oh,
that's like,
that's great. So you guys do a lot of
yeah,
outreach work.
we do a lot of outreach work. I mean, that's such a huge part of it too. Yeah, so that's one aspect. So hopefully reaching people who maybe never have to become clients, that would be great. And then people who already are clients, it comes in, at least in terms of the mental health department, it comes in through, I mean, I haven't gone through meeting with someone for therapy and not brought up psychoeducation at some point, whether that,
Exactly.
yeah, whether that's individually and it comes up pretty naturally within sessions. Someone might be talking about, oh, I see this pattern happening. And I might say, well, have you ever heard of the cycle of violence? Let's pull it up. Let's look at it together. This is what's called the cycle of violence. There's so much education out there, really, that's been developed over many years, um, that can be so helpful. And we also have therapy groups. So in our therapy groups, we have one specifically that's dedicated to education. It's 10 weeks of meeting once a week for an hour to talk about each week a new aspect of abuse or trauma or boundaries or healthy relationships, and providing, really vital information about how to recognize abuse and also how to recognize when a relationship is good, is healthy. We need that too. What does a healthy relationship even
Absolutely.
look like?
Yeah. Yeah. We need the
Yeah,
green lights too. Yeah.
exactly. So it's such a, especially because we're short term, educating people and trying to empower them with knowledge and education is, I think, such a huge part of what we do too. And there's so much that can be brought up with education, like talking about even what counts as abuse, going through that it's not just physical, there's emotional, psychological, financial, technological, social abuse. Like there's a lot, spiritual abuse, like there's so much in there. And even
Absolutely. Yeah.
spending time on that can bring up a lot for a client of recognizing, oh, I didn't even consider that abuse. Even with physical abuse, like we consider things like blocking exits, locking someone out, um, starting an argument before bed so that they don't get to sleep, throwing physical objects at a wall, not even at someone. Those are all things we consider physically abusive. Preventing a partner from going on hormone replacement therapy, that's something we would consider physically abusive, that many people might not initially think so because it's not hitting or things like that.
That can be really subtle, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So providing that psychoeducation to kind of bring some of that to the surface, right?
Mm-hmm.
So big, so big. And so I was just curious, like, or any of your when you offer these psychoeducation trainings that you're talking about, I know you do some outreach too, right? But
Mm-hmm.
like, are any of them ever like online in case someone wants like, is there a
Mm-hmm.
link where like you can click and like join online for this?
Yeah, so our services are still pretty much hybrid. We do have a physical office in San Mateo, and so we can see people in person. People can walk into the office and get information there, or they can call and get information there. And we can see people in person, or we can see people virtually too. And so virtually could be the, you know, um, community education aspect of it, or it could be we do lots of our groups virtually too. So folks just need to be able to have a safe, private, confidential space where they can take that Zoom call from. Yeah.
You said you do art groups?
Oh, we do art groups too. Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes. Yeah,
Oh,
because doing drama therapy, we in our we have a lot of clinicians at CORA that have a lot of diverse skills and abilities, and so I've done drama therapy groups at CORA in the past, creative art groups, writing groups. We try to keep it pretty diverse.
wow, that's
Yeah,
amazing. That's amazing, right?
yeah.
Because I've had couple speakers on regarding creative arts
Hmm.
therapy, right? How, as an alternative to
Hmm.
talk therapy and as a way to encourage people to express themselves in different ways, right?
Yeah,
Again, because when we think about kind of trauma or the body keeps the score, if you will, right? Kind of things
yeah.
living within our body in order to kind of like try to externalize that or be able to process that, right? Creative art or creative therapy, sorry, could
Hmm.
be a creative arts therapy. That's what I meant to say. You know what I meant to
Yeah,
say,
I
right?
know.
Is a
Yeah.
great way to like kind of engage in kind of healing around that.
Yeah, it is so huge. There's, maybe it's come up in the past, there's this concept of aesthetic distance, which is like the farther we can kind of cushion we can give between ourselves and maybe the traumatic content, the easier it might be to interact with that content. Which, as we know, with people dealing with trauma, we don't want to go right to the source of the trauma right away, because that could be, it's really difficult, overwhelming. But if we can provide a little bit of cushion, a little bit of distance, so instead of saying um, I, saying my name, or instead of saying what happened, maybe drawing what happened or writing what happened. It's this distancing oneself from being close with it, right up front. And so that can be really helpful when with our clients, or sometimes our clients they want to talk about it, they want to share about it, or we're kind of my supervisor likes to say we're the school of whatever works. So, we don't like to
That's true,
shut
right?
down.
People respond
Yeah,
to different things, like just
yeah,
much like they might respond to different interventions in different ways. They may
yeah,
respond to different approaches in different ways too. Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely. Wow, wow. Well, and kind of if for like a couple takeaways, like if we were trying to think about like people, anyone might be listening to this, right? Some
Hmm.
like a couple takeaways that they could like take with them to either kind of like think about or try to integrate into their lives if they are experiencing intimate partner abuse. You have like one or two little takeaways that for
Yeah,
food for thought.
yeah. There were kind of two that come to mind. The first one being trust your gut, but also use your brain. We need both our thinking brain and our intuitive sense of what's happening in order to, make decisions that are might be most aligned with what it is we want to do. That's not so impulsive. And so there's so much within abusive relationships that can kind of we might second guess what we're thinking, but our gut has a lot to say about it, or the vice versa. Maybe our gut is really anxious, doesn't want to leave, but we need to use our brain of, okay, what's the logic here? And so using both our emotions and logic is really important. And then the other thing I want to say is more about shame. There's so much shame that comes up when talking about abusive relationships, by being in one or recovering from one, or so much shame can come up, and that
Sure.
can really trap us from receiving the support that we need. And the more that we're able to have compassion for ourselves, the easier it will be to access support and freedom in our lives. Sometimes when in the moment it can feel kind of counterintuitive. Why would I want to go towards this feeling of shame when it feels so awful? But really, like, that's the pathway to freedom on the other side, is how do you confront that feeling of shame to get to the other side of it. um, it can be shameful talking about it with a therapist, or calling a hotline, or talking about it with a friend, but like that's the gateway to freedom in a lot of ways. And so have compassion for yourself, a hefty, huge amount of compassion. And everything can be figured out along the way. You don't need to know everything right now. What's the next right step? That's all you need to know.
Yeah, that's so well said, right? Because that might even contribute to this kind of frozen state that we might get in, right? Around not seeking help, is not
Yeah.
knowing, right? Well, how is it going to all unfold, right? We don't know,
Mm-hmm.
right? But taking one step at a time is
Yeah.
huge, and it's similarly, right? Having the self compassion for ourselves, like it's a huge step to even pick up the phone or walk into
Yeah.
that front door, right? To get that initial support, but
Yeah.
then that can feel like the biggest kind of
Mm-hmm.
once you've done that part, right, then
Mm-hmm.
there's the support on the other side, but sometimes that can be the kind of the biggest weight to get through as well.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard. And yeah, that's not to be underestimated. But people can do it, and people do it all the time. Oh my gosh, the ways that I've seen people like overcome these really difficult circumstances in ways that maybe they never thought they could. Like, I see people do that every day. It's
That
awesome.
must be a great thing about the work, right? Yeah,
That is
like
that is the
supporting them through
satisfying
that
part.
process. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So there's hope. I see it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Eliana, I really appreciate you joining and having this chat around, intimate partner abuse and all the work that you and your team at CORA does to support individuals who
Yeah.
might be experiencing that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was so fun to get to talk with you about it.
Thanks for tuning in this week. Be sure to listen to our next episode as we explore various aspects of how to show up for ourselves and others by tending to our own mental and emotional well-being.